Happy Tuesday, everyone. Welcome into a Tuesday special edition of the Final Whistle Sports Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Blaine Spencer. I have a real treat for you guys today. I have Dean Blandino, the rules analyst for Fox Sports, who does the rules analyzing for the NFL and college football if you're watching on Fox or Fox Sports 1, Fox Sports 2, etc. Dean, thank you so much for coming on the show today. How are you? And thank you so much.
I'm great. Thanks for having me. And I'm excited to sit down and talk a little bit.
I am too. So first off, I want to give a quick shout out to Nithin Ramachandra from the NHour Sports Show. He kind of was our little liaison here to get this set up. So I do want to give him a quick shout out and appreciation to him. He's doing great work there. If you haven't seen his stuff already, go check it out. He had Dean on last week, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, last week.
Yeah, so go check out that episode if you haven't already. So Dean, what got you into officiating? I know you were hired as an intern by Jerry Seaman. Was that were you an official coming in, or was that just something that came out of the blue? How'd that unfold?
Yeah, it was just really lucky. I didn't have any experience officiating. I wasn't exposed to it at a young age. I didn't know anything about it. I played sports my whole life. I played sports growing up. So obviously I had interaction with officials, but it wasn't something that I took an interest in. And when I graduated from college, I wanted to stay involved in sports. I had a communications degree. I thought about, maybe TV. I kind of wasn't sure if I wanted to be behind the scenes or in front of the camera. I had experience in both. But I knew sports was something that I was passionate about. And growing up in New York, and all of the major pro sports organizations have an office in New York City. I sent my resume to the NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA, hockey, Major League Soccer, all of it. And it was just the NFL called. They had a couple of internships available. And I interviewed for 3 internships, one in PR, one in human resources, and one in officiating with Jerry Seaman. And obviously Jerry liked me and hired me as an intern. And I just kind of learned officiating from being an intern and assisting and looking at video and just being in the right place at the right time and being very lucky.
Did you think that it was going to correlate to your whole career, or did you think it was just going to be a temporary stop?
Yeah, I had no clue. If you'd have told me then that this is going to be your career and you're going to do, 25 years later, you're going to be still doing this and have made a career out, I would have said you're crazy. I didn't anticipate that at the time. It was the NFL. I was a part of it. I was so happy and excited. And it was just really, I wanted to make the most out of it, however long it lasted. And it lasted a lot longer than I would have thought. And again, I'm very blessed to have had this career, like the way it played out.
And Jerry, he ended up when instant replay started to come out. I think it was the late 90s, if I'm not mistaken, 99 season around there. He put you in charge of of instant replay. What was going through all of that and trying to learn the nuances of replay, putting it into NFL play, trying to figure it out with the officials on the field, off the field? How much of a challenge was that?
Yeah, it was a big challenge, and it was something we had been working on. Replay, the first iteration of replay in the NFL was in 1986. Okay. I wasn't involved in that, but it was 86 to 91, and in 91 it got voted out. And when I started in 94, we were kind of doing, a pilot on the side. We were looking at plays and saying, okay, if we had instant replay, would this call get overturned, that type of thing. And so for 5 years, we studied it. We spent time with the competition committee. And like you said, in 1999, between the 98 and 99 seasons, that off season, the ownership voted to bring replay back. And Jerry put me in charge of a lot of things, like the system, the technical side of it. It was, figuring out what's reviewable. We had a blueprint from the old system, and we really were able to work off of that. But it was, okay, what's reviewable? What does the system look like? Coach's challenge. How many challenges does each team get? Tied to timeouts. Who's responsible inside 2 minutes? Those types of things. And then it was where do we find replay officials? Where are we going to find these people to fill these spots? So it was a big challenge. And obviously the system, it stuck, and we were successful, and it's grown exponentially since 1999. It's across all sports right now. And it's been, I think overall, it's been a positive for sports.
How do you think it's developed since when you started instituting it in 99? What was the general things that you guys were trying to look at? And then how has it grown exponentially now?
Yeah, I think when we put it in, the guiding principle was replay was an aid to officiating on game-changing plays. And it was only there to fix the obvious mistake. That was the key, right? The game-winning touchdown and the ball hit the ground, right? That type of thing. And so that was the guiding principle. And ultimately what has happened since then is technology continues to improve, and the scrutiny and the pressure that are on officials to get every call right, that has increased so much that we're really involved in so many more things than just the obvious mistake in the crucial situation. You know, we're reviewing 7 or 8 yard passes or line of game plays where it's not, not critical to the outcome of the game. It has an impact, but it's not the game-changing play. So it's definitely evolved, and I think technology has a lot to do with that. The technology is so much better today, where you can do it very efficiently and not impact the flow of the game negatively. And so I think that's how it's grown, and really why it's grown so much.
As a high school and smaller collegiate official myself, I would love to have instant replay during my stuff, but unfortunately it's not like that. But it hasn't grown that far yet. We'll see if it grows.
In some high school, right? In Texas, they're using it. In Alabama, they're using it in certain divisions. So we'll see. I think it's coming.
I agree. I think it's almost inevitable with the way technology has advanced so rapidly. And for you, you were a replay official yourself, and you had the opportunity to do 2 Super Bowls. What is the pressure and intensity of having to potentially make a game-changing call in that potential scenario?
Yeah, I never really thought of it that way, because it can become overwhelming if you think about, all right, we're making a decision. There's, I don't know, 110 million people waiting for you to make that decision. So I never really thought of it that way, but it is, there again, we talk about the scrutiny and wanting to get every call right. The 2 Super Bowls for me were much different. My first Super Bowl was the Titans and Rams, where the game ended on a tackle at the 1 yard line, right? So that was, it could have been overtime. We're obviously looking at that play. It doesn't get more exciting than that. And then the other Super Bowl I worked was, I think 35, I think that was, with the Giants and the Ravens, which was close for the first half. And then the Ravens kind of blew them out in the second half. So there wasn't a ton of really close end of game moments. But again, it's just kind of, you take each play as it comes, and you just, whether it's the first quarter in week 1 or the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl, you kind of have to treat it the same. And from officiating, you can't get too high or too low. You got to try to stay even keel.
I got to ask though, what was going through your head I think it was Price, I can't remember, the Tennessee Titans wide receiver. He gets tackled and he's reaching. How many different angles did you guys have? Did you guys have the goal line angle at least?
Yeah, we had the goal line look, and it was, right, it's such an exciting play, but from a replay perspective, it wasn't that close, right? He was still like pretty,
he was a full yard short, but still.
So it wasn't like it was like that, but it's still, the play's developing, and he catches, and then he catches the pass, and is he going to get in? We're ready. And then you just kind of, then they rule him short, and you go through your process. All right, let's find the knee down. Then let's look for the ball in relation to the goal line. Yeah, he's short, and we kind of moved on. But it's an exciting moment, when you're in it.
And I can only imagine the moment that you guys were going through. It just sounds so surreal to me to be able to be just like there, and you're like like literally the game is in your hands at the last second, which is kind of incredible. But then you actually took a step back from the NFL and you started your own little training and evaluation program for officials out in California, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
And why did you leave? Was it just the right time? Did you want to try something else with officials? What was your mindset behind it?
Yeah, it was a combination of those things. I had an opportunity. I was at the NFL and I loved what I was doing, but I kind of, got the sense without an officiating background, there was a glass ceiling for me in the officiating department. So I wasn't sure if that was where, my career was going to progress. And I had other things I wanted to do and try, and I had an opportunity to leave the NFL and start my own company and really deal with the relationships that I had made over the years with a lot of the college conference officiating coordinators. Allowed me to work with them. So I was working with the Big 12 and the Big 10 and the SEC, and it allowed me to learn more on the college side, because all of my background was NFL, and I was lucky enough to stay involved with the NFL, and I did that for a couple of years, and it was different because I was working in an office and in that environment, and then I went off and did my own thing, and it's a different world. You work from home. Everybody's working from home today, but back then it wasn't as prevalent. But you have to motivate yourself, and it was really a great experience for me. And then I was lucky enough for the NFL to want to bring me back full time, and and then I was made the head of officiating in 2013. After that, yeah.
Yeah, when they came calling back to bring you back on as the director, and then you also became the vice president of the officiating. What did you did you bring anything that was from what you learned in your own business? And did you try to instill that into the NFL? And what kind of ideas were you trying to reinvigorate the department with?
Yeah, I had been, I'd spent 20 years in the department, and I had done every job within the department. And I started as an intern. I did video, I did stats, I did, putting training tapes together. So I had experienced it from every aspect, and it really taught me so much. I learned from a lot of good people like Jerry Seaman and Art McNally and others that I was able to see what they did that worked, maybe some things that didn't work, and I just try to take my perspective, someone that I wasn't brought up in this officiating world, and I hadn't had an officiating background. So I try to take the perspective of somebody kind of from the outside, more of a fan's perspective, more of somebody that's learning officiating, later in their career. And I try to take that into it, and maybe, try some new ideas and some new training methods, and was able to. And the NFL was great. The people that I reported to, and even up to the commissioner, Roger Goodell, they were great. They allowed me to do certain things that I thought would be good for the program and good for the game. And that was a big deal for me. And I really enjoyed it.
Were there any challenges of trying to instill those different ideas with that fan perspective that you were trying to institute?
Yeah, there's always challenges. You have, one of the things, right? It's people sometimes are afraid of change, and especially in an organization like the NFL that had been around at that time for 80, 90 years, and so you kind of get set in your ways. And sometimes, like, well, who is this guy that never officiated that's going to come in and tell us what to do? So there's always a little bit of that. But I really, over the years, gained I think the respect of most of the staff, and they appreciated what I was bringing to the table, and I always just try to listen and make people feel a part of the process, right? Not just here's what we're going to do. Let's get your input. Let's get your feedback. Let's talk about it. And then we, as a kind of a collaboration, here's what we're going to do. We all talked about it. We got feedback from different groups, and you get that buy-in from that way. So it was really important to do it that way. And yeah, there was always challenges. It's not, I loved it, but it's not, if you want constant positive reinforcement, don't go into officiating. That's not, you don't get a lot of pats on the back and great job. It's a lot of the other more negative, but it's still, I loved it.
Yeah, the negativity comes with the territory. Then you switched gears and you decided to go into broadcasting. Fox Sports gave you that opportunity as a rules analyst. Why broadcasting? I know you said you had the communication background coming out of school. Was that just like the next step that you wanted to take?
Yeah, I knew that that was a next step for me at some point. I didn't know when that opportunity would present itself, but I knew it would be there at some point. It happened sooner than I thought, with Fox Sports, and they had an opportunity, and it really, it wasn't what was wrong with my position at the NFL. It was just so many good things and so many things that were right about this new opportunity for me, that really made the difference. And I probably would have, if I had to plan it out, I probably would have stayed at the NFL a little bit longer and then made the move. But the opportunity presented itself when it did, and I just couldn't pass it up. And I really haven't regretted it, a day since. It's been such a really, the people at Fox Sports are unbelievable. They're great people to work with. And I've learned, I've always tried to diversify my skill set and my experience, my knowledge. And I've learned a lot on the TV side. And I feel like that has made me just better all around. So it was definitely the right decision at that time.
Speaking of diversifying the language, you also were doing college football and NFL. You've even done XFL. You were hired to do their stuff in 2020, and then even a little bit of stuff for I think it's AAF, correct?
Yeah.
Like how were you juggling all the different rules? Because I know, especially the XFL and the AAF, they were trying little different nuances with the league. Was it pretty much set in stone about being pretty much the same, or how did you juggle that?
Yeah, so that's been a challenge. Just juggling college and NFL rules on Saturday to Sunday is a challenge. I mean, my foundation is NFL rules, so I always default to that. But there's obviously differences, and so I've had to work pretty hard at the college rules. I'm still not there. That's going to be, I think, a lifelong pursuit. But it was, the AAF was great. We used NFL rules. There were less differences in the AAF than the XFL. Okay. The XFL was so much fun because the XFL really had an opportunity to look at the game and innovate in a way that you never could with the NFL, right? The NFL is established. You've got to, rules changes. There's a process. You have to have 24 out of 32 clubs vote yes. With the XFL, it was, we can do whatever we want, right? But our guiding principle is the game, and we want to maintain the integrity of the game, but we could make changes. We could get input from different people, and let's think outside the box. And I thought the XFL, the people involved did such a tremendous job, and it was so well received. And that's why it was just, when I think about it still, I get sad about how it ended because of, the pandemic, and who could have possibly predicted or planned for that. So I'm hopeful that the XFL, I guess this is now 3.0, will go at some point in the near future, and I'm hopeful to be a part of it when it does.
Yeah, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, I think he will definitely be able to reinvigorate the league without
no question. That group with Dwayne and Danny Garcia and the group behind them, I don't think they got in it to fail. I think they're going to be successful. So
what are a couple of those rule changes from the XFL that you guys were tinkering with that you would like to actually see, or are there any rule changes that you would like to see in NFL or college football?
Yeah, the XFL kickoff was really innovative, and I thought it accomplished what it set to accomplish with, keeping the return in the game, but eliminating or reducing some of those high impact collisions that you see on kick returns, the traditional kickoff. So I thought that was such a real positive change. And I know the NFL has looked at it. I don't know, the NFL continues to tweak. I was a part of those tweaks to the kickoff, the formations on both sides of the ball and that type of thing. So I'm sure the NFL will continue to look at that. I just thought the access with the XFL was tremendous. Letting the fan, the viewer, hear and see things that they're not normally used to seeing. Watching the replay official work through the process in the booth, listening in. it's so cool because I think sometimes we forget, especially on the officiating side, that these are just people and they're working through a process. And so anytime you can peel back that curtain, I think sometimes, right, there's negatives to it sometimes, but I think overall it's positive because people can look at it and say, okay, I understand why that decision was made versus the decision is made. We don't know what was said, what happened, and now we just have questions. I thought it was really good.
Yeah, and I think XFL had the 4th and 15, right, instead of the onside kick. Was that one of them?
So that was the AAF. The AAF had a fourth,
13 or something.
And 12. Yeah,
Okay.
4th and 12, which is what the NFL is. They're proposing the onside kick alternative. The Eagles are proposing that. They proposed it last year. I don't know if that has enough support to pass, but it's definitely something that's going to continue to be part of the conversation. The XFL had more of a traditional onside kick. You just had to declare. There were no surprises because the regular XFL kickoff was so different. And but the 4th and 15 concept is interesting. It worked, in the AAF. It worked a couple of times. It's an exciting play, right? A 4th down play, 4th down conversion. But again, I think I don't know if it has the support to pass in the NFL, but we'll see.
Yeah, and on the college football side, I know the issue with trying to define a catch, especially from the collegiate level to the NFL level, 1 feet versus 2 feet.
Sure.
Do you think college should go to the 2 feet mentality? Because I know some wide receivers, maybe not this class, because this wide receiver class is absolutely phenomenal, but some of these classes, you see these younger wide receivers, they struggle to instigate and remind themselves that it's 2 feet and not that 1 foot that they're accustomed to college, which sometimes creates a difference of play in the game. So
yeah, I think, and I've been asked that question before, and I've been in discussions both on the college side and the NFL side with the rules committees. I think college is comfortable with the 1 foot. Mm-hmm. I think one thing we tend to forget with college is we think about, right, Ohio State and Clemson and Alabama, but you've got to now think about Division II, Division III. There's so many different levels of college football and so many different levels of athlete that to say 2 feet, yeah, the Power 5 and those players that are going to get drafted wouldn't have an issue with it, but you go down to Division III, it would be a drastic change, and offense would suffer, scoring would go down. So I think that's probably the main reason why they like the 1 foot rule, and I think it's good because the NFL is a step up, right? It's the best of the best. And so, for the receivers and the backs that can't figure that out, they're not going to be in the NFL, for very long. And that kind of separates the really good college player that can't cut it in the NFL and the player that is going to make it in the NFL.
Speaking of the NFL catch, that rule has changed almost every year, how to define what is a catch. For you, what has been your definition of a catch for you personally when you were with the NFL and now what you've tried to translate to broadcasting?
Yeah, I always tell people a catch, it's just, there's three parts to it, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, however you want to phrase it, but it's control. It's both feet or another body part. This is the NFL rule. Mm-hmm. And then it's time. And so having the ball long enough to do something with it, perform an act common to the game. And I think that time is the one that we struggle with sometimes, right? Because we can figure out controlling 2 feet for the most part, but then, okay, after the 2nd foot, how long does he have to have it? And I think that's where we've gotten into, some struggle and some challenges. I think the rule, it's, as long as I've been involved in the NFL, and I know people that I've worked with that were involved long before me, that there's always been some form of controversy about the catch rule. Mm-hmm. And it's not, we're always going to have those plays that we debate because there's judgment involved, and my judgment may, I may look at it a little bit different than you do. And, but that's really the 3 parts. It's control, mm-hmm. the body part, and time. That's what a catch is, and typically it's that time element that creates the most issues.
What's the toughest call that you had to make in a game for you?
The toughest one, there's a few that jump out that were really tough. I remember there was a playoff game, the Panthers and the Cardinals. And this is the year the Cardinals, the Panthers went to the Super Bowl and lost to Denver, but there was a Larry Fitzgerald play, and it was ruled a catch on the field, and we must have looked at that for a while, and I wasn't 100% that it was a catch, but I wasn't 100% that it was incomplete. It was one of those kind of in between plays, and we let it stand. And that's kind of what if you don't have indisputable video evidence, right? If it's not clear and obvious, you got to let it stand. The most controversial one I probably was a part of was the Des Bryant play that people always bring up. That play, it wasn't that difficult based on the rule at the time, but it certainly was controversial based on, the game, the playoffs, the Packers and Cowboys, and what was at stake. But there's been so many plays over the years that, the David Tyree helmet catch in the Super Bowl, I was in the replay booth for that. There's just so many amazing Santonio Holmes against the Cardinals in the Super Bowl. So many plays kind of stand out.
Those are some great plays that you've been a part of. And I want to transition back to college real quickly. And I know the evolution of the targeting rule has become such a huge standing and point that's been a part of the development of the game to try and enhance the safety of the game. And the NFL hasn't really adopted that college football philosophy of the targeting rule yet. Do you think that's inevitable that they will take it, or do you think the college football will more likely go to the NFL adoption of it, or will it stay where it is?
I think it'll stay where it is. I think the targeting rule it's a good rule. There's certainly been some growing pains and some challenges with it. I think the issue that college football has is, right, you're talking about student athletes. You can't fine them for illegal hits, right? So that's why the deterrent is the ejection, the disqualification. That's so the targeting rule, right? You're disqualified for the remainder of that game, or you could miss the first half of the next game. With the NFL, the rule, the actual protections are very similar. It's just that the NFL doesn't have an automatic disqualification attached to it, because the NFL feels that, look, you have smaller roster sizes, and there's limits. In college football, you could have 100 players dressed. In the NFL, right, you're dressing 53, 54, depending on, where we are with the roster. But, the NFL also has the ability to suspend and fine players. And so they feel comfortable with that. The actual protections are very similar. Defenseless players get protection from forcible contact to the head, neck. You can't lower the head and initiate with the helmet in either sport. So, but I think both groups are comfortable where they are. But I would love to see more conversation with college football rules and NFL rules to just further align them, especially on the safety thing, because I think if players are playing to the same rules in college football, the transition is easier when they get to the NFL in terms of the safety. They know the types of things they can't do. They know what they can do. And I think that would make the game better.
I agree. I think it's going to be I think the deterrent is right. The student athlete, there's just no way that you can. I think it'll be interesting to see how they tackle it when they get their likeness, though. Will you be able to use the image and likeness as a part of your deterrent now as well? I think that'll be a unique component that may be instituted that I would not approve, but I think that could be a potential possibility.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see how that all plays out.
Yeah, and then lastly, before we switch gears to the documentary that you worked on, I want to get your overall take. The NFL announced that they're going to a 17-game season. What was your initial reaction to it? Do you think it's good for football? Do you think it's bad for football? I know a lot of players have really came out and promoted that this is not what they want, especially the high-end athletes. But I think it's also a part of the lower end of athletes that are making the minimum. They get that 17th paycheck, which it really helps them. So what was your balance on it?
Yeah, I wasn't surprised. This has been a long time coming. It's from a business perspective, it makes all the sense in the world, right? If that's your, and I never use the word product to describe football, but if that's your product, more of it is good, right? So because everybody loves NFL football, everybody's watching it. The networks are paying a premium because of the ratings that NFL football gets. So to add another game makes great business sense, right? But you mentioned the players. It's from a safety perspective, right? This is a very physical game to play. It's different, right? It's different than baseball or even basketball, where they play longer seasons because they can. NFL football plays a shorter season because it is such a brutal sport sometimes. So you do have to be concerned about that. You have to be concerned about keeping players healthy. I think what you'll see is and I know coaches complain about this. They don't have enough time to work with these players in training camp and in practice. They're not in pads as much as they were 15, 20 years ago. So you're going to try to keep players healthy because now we've got another game that is going to count in the standings that may be the difference between us making the playoffs or not. And so from a health and safety perspective, it's not all that great, but from a business perspective, it definitely makes sense.
Yeah, and I don't think it helps either that the NFL and the players are trying to make sure that they go all virtual in their offseason training programs permanently like they did last year because of the COVID. Do you think that'll make even more of an impact of seeing coaches rest players a lot more than you would significantly see, especially if a playoff spot's locked up already? You'll see more players sitting.
Yeah, I think you could. That's certainly, we always think about unintended consequences, and you certainly, in theory, you'd want we're playing an extra game, and all those games are going to count. But we know right now, that the last weekend of the season, not all those games matter, right? There are a lot of games that they matter for draft position, but they don't matter for the postseason. So there could be more games that don't matter, and or we're locked into the number 2 seed. We're not going to play, and we saw teams do that, right? We're not going to play our quarterback or our star defensive player, whatever it may be. So again, I think it's the bottom line is, look, it's going to help the bottom line. So that's why they're doing it, and you're just going to have to figure out all the other unintended consequences as we go along. And I think coaches, they're going to have to keep players, just be even more mindful of just keeping players healthy because we're extending the season.
Absolutely. I want to transition now to the Her Turf documentary, where you were the executive producer on that, where it talks about 3 female football referees trying to level the playing field, as per se, especially with women's in sports, and is trying to have them get that fair shot in officiating. I know you were at the NFL when Sarah Thomas was hired, and she now broke a barrier being an NFL referee at the Super Bowl. Just can you detail the documentary and what the impact of what Sarah was able to accomplish this season? Yeah,
that was an amazing experience to be a part of that documentary. The filmmaker, Chantel Hansen, she had this idea, and she met these female officials and followed them around, and kind of, there was a football camp, the Harold Mitchell football camp. And, there's football officiating camps all over the country where officials go and they'll work, whether it's 7-on-7 flag or other types of football, and just get reps and get better. And Chantel followed these 3 women officials and learned so much about them. And just it's hard enough being an official, but then being a female official in what has been and continues to be a male-dominated profession, that creates a whole nother set of challenges. And it was just a fascinating experience to be a part of. And the film won a bunch of awards and some film festivals, and we're looking to, we'll make it, release it to the general public online, hopefully in the next couple of months. And now we're thinking about maybe doing something more of a longer series and following game officials and learning about their lives and just trying to humanize these people, because they're just people like you and me, But sometimes we don't treat them that way. And I think, anything we can do to educate and expose people to, what officials go through outside of the field, the court, the ice, whatever it is, I think that's a good thing.
What are some of the biggest takeaways that the documentary wants to present?
Yeah, I think that it's just the challenges that these ladies have. You're dealing with, like I said, a male dominated profession, not just the officiating, but obviously coaches and players, and so how are they viewed? And because you never played the game, you're not a man, you can't officiate it. And that, we know that's nonsense, but that's what a lot of female officials deal with. And I think, again, it's just realizing that these women, they didn't know that football officiating was an option. They got exposed to it for a variety of different reasons, and it became a passion of theirs. And so, one of the things in the film festivals, when we met people, especially young girls, they said, I didn't know I could be a football official, right? And that's so cool to hear, because now this girl could, it's a whole nother avenue that she could pursue that she didn't even know was an option. So, and that's why Sarah was so important, because now, for young women to see someone like Sarah at the top of her game and now working the Super Bowl, that's tremendous. And it's really something that I think has such a great impact beyond just, the game itself.
What do you expect this to bring? Do you think the more women will end up taking on the challenge of being a football official, or do you think it's going to be more of a slow progress?
Yeah, we're hopeful. Look, it's not going to happen overnight. We're hopeful that this will kind of ramp it up a little bit and introduce young women to officiating, and they could get started. And then, and it's not just getting people started, women or men, it's then retaining them, because as they're, you can have a bad experience, early on. And if you don't have somebody that can mentor you and walk you through that and help encourage you, there's so many young officials that start and then they quit because they're getting abused for, and verbally abused by a lot of times by adults, parents, coaches.
As one who has heard it from parents are actually a lot worse than the athletes sometimes, which is unfortunate.
No question. The National Association of Sports Officials, they do these polls of sports officials, and every time, right, it's the parents at the top that are the worst offenders. The kids, the players are least. It's parents, coaches, and the players. It's not as it's rare. And that's sad, and that's something, and that goes for both men and women. And we just have to continue to combat that and make it a more, a better environment that people can be a part of.
Yeah. And lastly, before I let you go, I was reading that on the Meet the Turf that you actually did a little bit of comedy. Is that true as well? What was your go-to bit? I gotta know. What was the go-to bit? What was the go-to?
A lot of my bit. I grew up in a big Italian family, and my mom is probably the most unintentionally funny person on the planet. So a lot of it is just experiences that I had. I didn't do it, I haven't done it in a long time. It was never a career goal of mine. I just enjoyed it, and it really helped me in my career. But for me, it's just, things that I observed, things that I experienced, and it was a lot of fun, and it helped me. It helped anybody that has a fear of public speaking. Get up in front of a group of strangers with a microphone. It'll either make you never speak in front of a group again, or you'll overcome that fear.
You heard it here first, people. Go to an open mic night and really test the waters.
There you go.
Well, Dean, I'm really honored that you were able to come on with me today. It was a really awesome conversation. I hope that the season progresses like it did last year. We don't have any of these COVID pauses, and I look forward to seeing what the future holds for the Her Turf documentary, hopefully being fully released, and then you as well at Fox Sports. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Blaine.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. You guys enjoy your Tuesday. That was your Tuesday edition of the Final Whistle Sports Podcast.